Good morning, everyone. How are you all doing? I've been seeing some conversations in the chat. So good morning, good morning. Let me see here. Interesting conversations this morning before we started off. Some folks here talking about what this is, so we'll come to that in a moment. But awesome conversation here of figuring out how to complete the Rubik's Cube. I think I've actually got a couple handy, so maybe I'll do that at the same time while we're streaming here today. I don't know. But yeah, that sounds interesting. Completing the Rubik's Cube. Awesome. Hail, hey, good morning. Lots of good mornings and welcomes and hellos. So, thank you for being with us today. Thank you for joining us. Great to see everyone already chatting away in, across the different streams that we got going on here. So, what is this? Who am I? What is going on? I'm Chris from GitHub's developer relations team, and this is Rubber Duck Thursdays. So, there were some questions and conversations in the chat. That, this is my first time attending this event. Is it held regularly? So you can absolutely be forgiven because we only started these last week. This is our second week of doing Rubber Duck Thursdays. So let me explain what it is, what kind of the vibe is here, and what we're going to do. So Rubber Duck Thursdays is really just a casual kind of live stream, an opportunity for us to come together, to hang out, to do some coding, to ask questions as we go, to learn together. So it's a really kind of casual vibe. It's a really informal kind of stream that we're doing here. So every Thursday, we're going to have a few different people go and stream online. So myself, 10 a.m. GMT, so that's this session right here. And then my colleague Cassidy at 2 p.m. Eastern American time then as well. So different opportunities and different places to go and learn as well. And I think then the recordings will be available then on YouTube as well, I guess. So go and take a look at those. All you need to remember, by the way, is this link. Here we go. gh.io/rubberduckthursdays, because then what we'll do behind the scenes is we'll repoint that URL to the next upcoming stream, so you can always find what's going on there if you are interested. So yeah, I guess then would love to just understand who we've got here today. Like, how long have you been doing development? What's kind of your favorite language? Let me know in the chat. I'm just curious to see what kind of groups of folks that we've got here listening in today. And for anyone who, let's say, maybe didn't join in last week and wasn't familiar, I'll give you a bit of a explainer of what we were working on last week. So let me go and just bring that up here. So one of the projects I've been working on here at GitHub is something called GitHub Skyline. And basically, it's a app that we can, or rather a GitHub CLI extension that we can go and run and generate a 3D model. So something that looks a little like this. In fact, let me go and stop sharing. There we go. So something that looks a bit like this. So last week I was just kind of showing that a little bit. We were talking about GitHub code spaces, how it makes things easier to get started. So because this is an open source project, I want to make it really easy for anyone to be able to contribute to it. So you don't have to kind of fight with setting up your machine and all of those kind of things. And then we started looking last week at just doing some refactoring to the code. I've made a few changes since then, so I can maybe walk through those if everyone's interested. But what I also wanted to do was kind of explain a little bit about GitHub Actions, releases, and kind of how things work, and maybe start a new CLI extension from scratch, because I think that was maybe of interest to some people last week. But let me know, what do you want to see here today, and what do you want to see here over the next few weeks? Let me know, because then we can kind of course correct and make sure that we're going on the path that you all want to see as well. So let's see, I can see lots of conversation happening. So Python, JS full stack, Web 4, JavaScript, Python, JS, Dart, Postgres, JavaScript, Flutter, .NET, Python, 15 years of development, developed in many different languages. Go for sessions like these at Python. Awesome. So we've got a good mix of languages in there, some Python reoccurring, some JavaScript, and some other bits and pieces there as well. Nice. And then C#, Python, and Java as well. TypeScript. Good. So, let's start then talking a bit about GitHub Actions here. And I'm, again, just curious, who's already using GitHub Actions today? Who is maybe running CI with GitHub Actions? Who's doing other things with GitHub Actions? Because I think that's one of the things I just want to show off a little bit here is just the range of things that you can do. So we'll take a look at that in a sec. But let's just see what folks in the chat are saying. So more JavaScript, Java, C#, Elixir and Phoenix, nice. MLOps operations, Rust on TS, now I'm 10 plus. Data, okay, good. Okay, good varieties. Good. So let me bring up the screen here. Love GitHub Actions. I love to hear it, Daniel. So this is the repository for GitHub Skyline. So this is all real. This is all kind of the real implementation. So you can go and check it out if you like over at gh.io/Skyline. So I'll leave that on screen here for a moment if you want to go and check that out. So folks using CD with GitHub Actions use it heavily. All my projects work with GitHub Actions. I'm actually near to release one of my own. Awesome, exciting. Releasing one of your own GitHub Actions. And maybe we'll talk a bit about that as well. So good. Okay, so some good variety in this. So let me go and just bring that banner down and expand this page. So for anyone who's not aware already, GitHub Actions is a way really to go and automate things going on within your GitHub repositories. So it's a way that you can go and react to different events. So things like, oh, can I drop a link in the chat? Yes, I can. So let me just go and do that. gh.io/Skyline. I am rubbish at multitasking. There we go. Hopefully that should you should get that okay. So let's just recap there again. So GitHub Actions are a way for you to go and automate different activities, different things that you need to do inside of your GitHub repositories. So think about different events or different triggers that you might react to. So quite common, for example, is something like a pull request. Maybe you want to go and automate the build or the test and some quality checks, for example. But you're not just limited to things like CI, CD. You can do that across a range of different areas in GitHub. So think, for example, of like spinning up a GitHub issue and being able to respond accordingly to that. We do that a lot internally here at GitHub, actually. This idea of issue ops. You create an issue and then something happens. There's lots of different ways that you can go and use GitHub Actions. So let's maybe take a walk through about how I'm using them in Skyline. Then we can maybe just have a little bit of a play and kind of look in VS Code. And then maybe let's just create a brand new CLI extension from scratch. And then go from there. Unless anyone's got any other suggestions, let's do that as a plan for today, I think. So the way the GitHub Actions work is in your repository, you have this .github. There we go. So there's a question about Skyline, which I'll come back to in a moment. But there's this .github folder here inside of the repository. And in here, there'll be another folder. And that folder is called Workflows. And that is where you go and store these GitHub Actions. So you can see things like build, linter, release. These are all names that I've chosen. They're like friendly names that we've kind of chosen here. So let's just go and walk through them and maybe kind of explain a little bit about what they are, how they work, what they do. So I've got VS Code. We're going to go and open the same over here. And I'm going to go and zoom in a little bit. There we go. And the reason I've come over here is I think I've got it installed. Let me just double check. There we go. I do. Good. There is an extension in VS Code if you didn't know already. So let's just go and scroll down. There is this GitHub Actions extension. And the GitHub Actions extension just helps a little bit in terms of authoring these GitHub Action workflows. So GitHub Actions are made and written using YAML. So they're stored as code. And then there are different runs that get generated then of those workflows. So like instances of those workflows. So here, for example, this is the template for the build YAML file. So you can see that we've got, it's called build on a push to main or on a pull request to main. That's when this triggers. So that's what I was talking about a bit earlier, that, you know, continuous integration, continuous delivery or deployment is one of the common use cases of GitHub Actions, but it's not the only use case that you've got there as well. So if you use this GitHub Actions extension, you can, on your keyboard, use the shortcut Control and Space. So Control Space, just like that. And then you get these different options. So these options are the different triggers that you can go and use. So, you know, relation to a branch protection rule, relation, I think, to a repository creating, a GitHub discussion, for example. There's these different triggers that you can then go and choose from. I've actually got, let me see, let me go back. I've actually got a doc somewhere on that here. And yes, I can just see some questions here. Is there a recording for the session? So it's automatically streaming to LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitch. And it should go onto the YouTube channel afterwards then as well. So yes, there should be. But please hang out live, because we, you know, we love to see the interaction here that we're having in the chat. So please do stick around if you find it useful. So yeah, back to the doc here. This is on the GitHub docs. So again, let me just pop that in chat if it's useful here for anyone. So there we go. So this is the doc page for all of these different GitHub Actions triggers. So you can see, for example, branch protection rule is here. Check suites, etc., etc. So if we look at like discussions, for example, so GitHub discussions, where you have these kind of community discussions, we could go and trigger a GitHub action workflow when one is created, when one is transferred, when one is pinned, etc. So you can see that this gives you like a lot of flexibility in terms of just how you can go and use GitHub Actions and what you're kind of automating and reacting to. You know, we've got things like pull requests, so obviously using those for our CI/CD and those quality checks before we merge into main. So there's a good variety of different examples in there. Now, the reason I'm just starting with this is we'll be talking about the release trigger in just a minute, because there's something in there that I just want to show in terms of what we're doing in the repo here. But this is how you know, this is how you can go and trigger based on these different types of workflows. So hopefully that all makes sense. Please continue dropping questions in the chat and I'll keep answering those as we go. But you can see there that that section there is effectively saying, when does this thing run? On what conditions should this thing run? Then the next line, we have the permissions. So what is that workflow able to do? It's able to read the contents of the repository. So, you know, for things to like check out the code, for example, to be able to check out the repository. So then from there, this is when we start establishing what it is that our workflow is doing. So running on Ubuntu latest, we've got a set of steps in here that we're going to go and run. So it's going to go and check out the code. It's going to set up Go. It's going to go and build the code, run some tests, and actually go and upload the test report then as well. I'm just going to zoom in on that again so you can read that nice and clearly. This is then using the upload artifacts action here to go and upload the reports. And then from there, we actually post the kind of raw results as, I guess, an output to the job. So if we just jump back, and if you go into actions, oh, hold on. This is where I jump back and do this off screen a sec, just to authenticate. So bear with me just one moment. Go. Okay, right. I am back, and let me bring up the stream. There we go. So let me just go and take a look at this build, for example, here. So if we go and take a look at that, we can see that all of those steps ran successfully. So, all check marks there, all looking good. But when we look at the summary itself and we scroll down, you can see that we've got this code coverage report. So that is literally just the raw outputs of the tests from the command line, but using that command that I just showed a moment ago here. So this thing right here. So piping that out to the GitHub steps summary. Good. So yeah, that's, for example, what we're doing with the build there. But let me show you something different. So again, linter is very similar. Let's just show that quickly first. On a push or a pull request to main, we're effectively running some linting steps. So making sure that, it's following some certain standards, some certain conventions for our code. So that's all that one is doing there. Well, what I want to do is I want to show you this particular workflow. So what it's doing here is it's a release step, or we call it release. It's not triggering on a release. It's actually triggering on a push when there's a tag which begins with a V. So, whenever we've got one of those semantic versions which has been published as a tag. So in terms of what this workflow can do, it can go and write back. It has an ID token because we need to go and write some binaries. You'll see why in a moment. And then attestations as well. And again, you'll see why in just a moment. So then we have the jobs, and we have, I think, one job in this one. Yep. And that's a release. And well, I've called it release. So release is just the kind of friendly name that we can give one of the jobs that we have as part of our workflow. So think of it as like a phase or a stage of what we're working on. So that runs on Ubuntu latest. Those are machines hosted and operated by GitHub. So they're ephemeral. You can use them, and then you can stop using them then. And then we've got this checkout step, and then we are running this CLI extension here. So CLI Jate extension precompile. So what is this thing doing? So this is an action which has been made by the GitHub Actions team. So you can see here that it's publicly available. You can go and check that out. But what it's there for is to publish the binaries for GitHub CLI extensions. And it's actually part of the setup for, I think, the Go precompiled extension. That was the route that I went to set up my extension. But this is effectively the way that you kind of build the binary for the CLI, and so then people can go and pull it down later. So we've got some configuration in there. So release Android being set to true. So we're releasing to Android, or SDK version is supported. Generating some attestations, and then the Go version file then as well. So that's the parameters or the configuration that is supported by that action. So if we jump back to the repo, there we go. And if I just go to my code, the reason that job's important is when you go to any of the releases, there we go, you can see that we've got a number of binaries that have been attached to that release. So those binaries are effectively what are being generated by that workflow. So we've got Android binaries, Darwin, FreeBSD, etc., etc., etc. So that is how you can go and then distribute that GitHub extension. So as an example, if we wanted to go and cut a new release, so draft a new release here, I could go and choose my new tag, so v.0.13, go and generate those release notes. And we can see that Chris, someone I've been working with here, has fixed something to do with the fonts on the front of the kind of model base. So what I can do is I can rename that to something a bit more friendly if I like for the release name, but that looks good to me. And then what we do in here is, because of clicking that button, we get the diff from the last release that we pushed out and the current release, so 0.1.3, which we're pushing out here. Just to maybe pause a sec as well, making sure that everyone is familiar with this kind of versioning syntax here. So let me just make sure that everyone's familiar with that. So this is called SEMVer, or semantic versioning. And from left to right, the numbers mean something specific. They mean something different. So the number on the far left is what you call the major version. And that's when you're making like some breaking changes, some breaking API changes. So something which, the user, if they updated, would no longer potentially operate the same. It might break something in the user's environment. A minor version is when you're adding functionality in a backwards compatible manner. So where it's kind of safe to upgrade, it's not going to break anything. And then the right-hand number is the patch version. So that's the number that represents when you make a backward compatible fix. So maybe like a bug fix, for example, that again, it doesn't break anything, but it just fixes something for that version that was released there. And that's what the semantic version is there, is those kind of numbers. So versions major 0, minor 1, and patch 3. So that's what we were just working on. So you can see what we're going to put in this version then is just this one change. So fixing the quality of the font on the front, the resolution of the font on the front. It's already been merged into main. So we're just going and putting a cut of that out for a release. So let me go and publish that. And we'll set that as the latest release. So right now you can see there's no assets associated with that. And what will happen is now we get this release job kicking off. And that's the job that we just looked at a moment ago. So that is the job that will go and basically build the code. It will go and release those assets then for us then as well. So, the Android versions, the Darwin versions, I forget the whole list that we had there, but those ones that we saw earlier, that is now what's happening. So that one triggered because we have this push with that V at the front as a tag. That is why that one happened. If we pushed a tag without the V at the front, then don't think that workflow would trigger. So that's how that's working, and you'll see in a moment then that release is now available. So yes, we've this is live, so to your question there, Henry, and we are releasing live as well, so we're being very brave on this live stream. We'll see how it goes. Might need to go fix some things later, we'll see. So yes, pushing this live here. So good. So that's kind of what's going on with GitHub Actions there in the project. Now, the reason I showed this, the reason I brought this up is actually this release YAML is actually created as part of the default path when you're creating, I think it was a pre-compiled Go extension for the GitHub CLI. So let me just navigate across here. So I've got, again, some docs open. So I'll paste the link in the chat here as well if anyone is interested in taking a look and following along. So there we go. You can see in here, there's a few different types of extensions you can create. So you can create an interpreted extension, precompiled extension in Go. That's the one that I think we used for GitHub Skyline, non-Go precompiled extension, etc. So yeah, that's effectively the way that you can kind of bootstrap and get started. So let's just check in on the action, see how it's doing. It's still running, so no problem there. We'll keep that all going. Just going to leave that on the summary page. So what I'd suggest is maybe let's go and create something live again. So let me jump across to my terminal. And I'm just going to go to my desktop and let's go and use that command. And I think it was just the extension name. Yeah. So let's go and call this something like game. Give that a moment to go and run. And what is a GitHub extension is a question that we've got in the chat here. So great question. So let me go and show you that answer. So what we are working on here is the GitHub CLI. So you can go and install that. I think if you go to cli.github.com, there'll be instructions on how you can go and install it for your operating system. But when you go and run GH in the terminal, you can then interact with GitHub just like you would be interacting with it, you know, in the user interface. There's a number of different options. So you can authenticate to GitHub. You can go and manage your issues, your code spaces, your repositories, etc. So, you know, I could go and do something like create a repository. I could go and create an issue, for example. But those are some of the features which are available out of the box. If we go and type GH extension and specifically GH extension list, there's a number of different extensions here which are installed in my environment. So think about it like, you know, Chris is coming along and wants to create a new some new kind of extension for the command line for GitHub CLI. This is how I would go and do it. So GitHub has released a number of different options here. You can see there's a you know, the Copilot one, there's models, for example, as well, and Skyline is one of those. So let me just go and uninstall Skyline a sec. Let's remove Skyline. There we go. And oops, let me go and check. There we go. It's released. So we should now be able to get version 0.1.3. So extension install Skyline. Oh. Just like that. There we go. That's installed. And GX extension list. And there we go. You can see we've got the GitHub Skyline extension installed. And this, to your question, Henry, are we publishing a project? This is what we've been publishing, is this extension. So now what we can do is we can run Skyline. I get my ASCII art version of my Skyline. Then it generates a 3D version of the Skyline for me as well. And that includes the fix that was just pushed there now. Because if we look at the version, you can see it's version 0.1.3, the one we just published there. So yeah, that is GitHub Skyline, and that is what we just published. Can we just update an extension, or do we need to remove and install it again, as you just did? Great question, Davide. The reason that I uninstalled mine, and I'll scroll back up just so you can see that actually, is you'll notice that there was no kind of repo or version here. That's because I've been doing a lot of local builds and a lot of local testing on my machine, so I just forgot to clean it up ahead of the stream. That's why. So what you could do, I think I might be able to show this actually. Can I do a version? Okay, so you can pin. There we go. So dash pin v0.1.2, maybe. Let me see. Yeah, so I'll do that. You can tell this is live. Here we go. Right, so let me do this. Let me remove that extension for you first. So remove Skyline. And we'll go and install 0.1.2. There we go. So if we list that out, you can see 0.1.2 there. And then what you would be able to do is do something like upgrade. And then, oops. Did I do that right? No. Let me see here. Extension, upgrade. PH-Skyline. I think it's because I've pinned it. I think that's what I've done wrong here. So I'm sure there's another flag that I can do, but that is effectively the command you would use anyways. GH extension upgrade, and that's the approach. So you do not need to uninstall and reinstall. So yeah, that was just because I had the kind of local build of Skyline on my machine instead. So that was the reason I did it that way. Exactly, Davide. It's pinned. I've created a problem for myself, so I'm just going to go to that and do that, and we'll be back to latest now. So there we go. Good. Glad it's clear. Thanks, Davide. Good to hear. Good. So yeah, so that's how we can go and publish those extensions. That's how we can go and upgrade the extension locally as a user then as well. So any of you can go and make one of these extensions. That's the really cool thing. And that's what we were just about to show earlier. So if you remember, and I'm just going to start this over again, just so it's super, super clear. So let me just RMI. Just going to remove that we just created earlier. So let me see. So just going to bring that command back up again. There we go. There we go. Cool. So GH extension create dash precompiled equals go game. Let's go and run that again. So what that's going to do is create a folder in my current repository called gh-game. It's going to initialize the Git repository. It's going to make an initial commit and set up some basic things for us in there that we'd want to go and see. So we can go and take a look at that. We'll go and open that up in VS Code. Go. And you can see that already it's gone ahead and built that for us there as well. So there is the binary there as part of that. So if we just go, I think it's just gh-game. There we go. This is the gh-game extension. So it's a way for us to go and run something in the CLI here. So we could then go and do, we could go and make something here. Because all that's been done in this main.go file is we're going ahead and we are just executing this main function. It's going and grabbing the name of the current user, and then it's saying it's running as that user then as well. So that's why you get the running as Chris Reddington in there as well, because it pulls the context from my GitHub CLI and kind of where I'm logged in there. So that's kind of the default one there. We can go and go and change that as we like. So one of the common things that common packages that is used in the GitHub CLI is I think a Cobra package. So I'm going to go and look that up because I can't remember that off the top of my head. So let me go and take a look at some of my existing code. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? Can you tell me about the Cobra package used in this project? Let's go and see. Okay. Of course, I could have used Copilot in VS Code as well, but I was going to take a look at my repository. So instead, we'll go and take a look at Copilot here. So Cobra package, library used for creating modern CLI applications, command structure, automatic help generation, command aliases, persistent flags. Okay, so that looks good. So what I'm going to do then is I'm actually going to jump back into my editor. I'm going to open up GitHub Copilot. I'm going to see if Copilot can maybe help us out here. So let's say, hey there, I would like to use the Cobra library. Cobra library as part of this project. Please could you help me introduce it and the existing functionality. So there's two different ways that you can kind of interact with Copilot on this right-hand side. You've got Copilot edits, which will make the changes for us, or we've got Copilot chats, where it's a bit more like a rubber ducking kind of scenario. So let's go and try that out and see how we get on. So, right, we'll need to create a new CMD package to organize our commands. Good, it's picked up on that good convention. Move the existing functionality into a root command. Update the main file to use Cobra. Cool. So, yeah, it's created that for us. New file, so we'll take a look at that in a sec. And it's updated the main file for us then as well. So do not forget to run. Yes, I need to actually go and bring that project locally. So let me go and insert that into terminal and go, oops, am I in the right folder there? I am, good. So let me just go and grab that again. There we go. All right, so we've added that locally. I'll bring that down and let's go and review the code changes here. So we can helpfully see that there's a diff in terms of what has been changed. So we're bringing in the OS package, and we'll probably see why in a sec. And then we're importing the CMD package then, the one we're now creating. And I'm using Go, by the way. We can go and take a look here. So if there's an error when running, so the execute command in CMD, or if there's not an error, I should say, go and exit with a 1. Yeah. Okay, good. That looks fine. So now the logic, hopefully, is moved over to my CMD package. We've got format. We've got the API import from earlier being brought over. And we've got Cobra. And then we're saying, right, use gh-game, a GitHub CLI extension for games. Yeah, looks good. Okay, it looks like that's still bringing in that functionality. Wasn't there another line, I think? Yeah, so it's got rid of the hi world. This is the gh-game extension, I think. Yeah, but that's okay. That's okay. I mean, that's just our hello world kind of example. So let me go and save that. And then we could go and, go and build that. There we go. So it's running as Chris Reddington, and we know it's changed because it hasn't given us that, hello text that we had earlier. So that looks good. Okay, so that looks good. But what if I want to have different subcommands? So, thanks. How can I add additional subcommand? For example, who am I could be the existing functionality, but then I want to create one called coin toss. So a user would have to type something like GH game coin toss or GH game. Where am I? So what I'm doing here is I'm explaining my intent of what it is that I want to do with Copilot. Oops, there we go. Explaining my intent of what I want to do with Copilot. And I'm just giving a bit more context of what my expectation is, what the end result should be. So, it's not just about how can I add additional commands, but, the existing thing that we've got there about we're running as Chris Reddington could be like a who am I subcommand, but then I want to go and create a coin toss game. Now, I haven't been very clear about what that coin toss game is, but I don't want to do too much at once. I want to keep iterating with Copilot here so it can kind of stay on track in terms of what it needs to do. So maybe in the next iteration, we might then start implementing that game, for example. So for now, let's go and try that out and see how we get on. So yeah, we've got this here. So we're creating a new Who Am I Go file. We've got the removing the existing package or the functionality there. It's going and adding the commands. Good. And this is the beauty, is it knows that there's a function in Cobra called add command, where you can go and add those different subcommands there then. So that looks reasonable, I think, because we're getting rid of the run here. And I would expect that logic to be moved over into who am I. So Cobra command, and there's the run. So that looks good. So it's using who am I. And then we've got coin toss here. So toss a coin. And there we go. It's already going and predicting what we think that functionality is going to be. It's not quite what I want it to be. And I'll show you why in a sec. I've got some thoughts on how I want to make it a bit more fun and interactive. But let's go and try it out once again. Let's go and see. So go build. So obviously it does, it does that build. So if we go and run that, now you can see that we've got this different kind of output here. I've got this coin toss command. I've got this completion, help, and who am I then as well. So who am I and coin toss are the ones that we care about. So GH gay. Oh, sorry. Let me run it locally for now. So the reason I'm running it like this is I haven't installed it yet into the CLI. So just going to keep it this way to iterate quickly. So GH game, and let's go and run who am I. Good. We're running as Chris Reddington. And if we do coin toss heads. Oops. Tails. There we go. We can go and do this for the rest of the session. We can go and ship it, right? That's what we do now. So that you can see basic example, but you can see how we're starting to make these different kind of sub commands here. So that's good. But let's say that I want it to be more interactive. I don't just want to flip the coin, but I want the user to be able to input. So we need to go and and implement that functionality. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to accept those changes, because in terms of the structure, in terms of what I was trying to do to make that project, the kind of the CMD, the subcommands, that's done. So I want to start a new thread, because the context of what we're doing here is a little bit different. And I don't want Copilot to be guided by some of the things we were doing earlier. So let's go now and try this out. So you'll notice that the working set has changed. And think about the working set as the files that Copilot is able to go and change when we're using Copilot edits. So I can go and add files to that. I can add any of those ones back in if I wanted. I don't want to, but now I'm just going to leave it as is. And yes, FedDev, we are writing in Go, exactly right. So let's go and figure out how we kind of prompt this. So what I want to do is when the user runs the coin toss command, they should be able to enter either heads or tails. Able to select either heads or tails. Once they have entered their inputs, the CLI will randomly generate heads or tails. If they are correct, they get to roll again, flip again. Otherwise, it's game over. Can you make the changes for that, please? There we go. So you can see how just carefully thinking about the prompts allows you to start thinking. The way I think about it is, what context would Chris need to know to understand how to do that task? So it's like going up to someone randomly and saying, hey, can you go and do this thing, please? You need to give them the context of what they're working on. So the context was that file, and also me explaining what it is that we're trying to achieve. So rather than, like I said earlier, which was, let's make a coin toss command, which in fairness, it made it. It made it as it flipped heads or it flipped tails. But I had something in my brain which I knew I wanted to be more interactive. And I didn't communicate that intent earlier, whereas I have now. So here we go. Let's go and see. So we can go and enter that. Oops, my IntelliSense there. Enter my guess, heads or tails. We'll convert it to lower. We'll trim spaces. That seems reasonable. If it's not heads or tails, then we'll go and basically loop back and say, hey, you need to go and give us an answer, please. We'll generate the random number. It's an interesting way of doing it. Fine, it's always going to be tails unless it's less than 0.5, sure. The coin shows the result. And if the guess is the same as the result, there we go. Okay, that looks good. That looks like the type of thing that I wanted to do. So let me go and save that. And I'm just going to go and hit accept on that one. And let's go. I'm going to go and make this full screen again, just to make sure you can do that. And yes, VedDev, that is a great point. Let me bring that up on screen. You can use DeepSeek R1 as not in Copilot. So let me just clarify that point actually. So you can't use it in Copilot yet. So some of the models that you can use are the Claude 3.5 Sonnet, the OpenAI models, so GPT-4o, O1, O1 Mini, and some of you may be able to access some of the Gemini models as well. But where you can access DeepSeek R1 is actually in GitHub models. So think about GitHub models as the place where you can go and experiment with AI models. So if you wanted to build AI into your application, that is where you can go and start trying out DeepSeek R1. So yeah, please do go and take a look at it, gh.io/models, and you'll be able to go and take a look in the playground. And the best bit about models is if you go and take a look at models and the models playground, as a GitHub user, you get a free allowance every month, so you can go and use that. So that's pretty awesome. So yeah, thanks for the point there, ZDev. And no problem. It's all rapidly moving, so misunderstandings are completely okay. So it's all good. And this is what we're here for today, is to learn and to kind of share knowledge with each other. So thank you for raising it. I appreciate you. Good. So let's go and build that again. Good. So we're now going to run the coin toss. Enter my guess. Nope. Okay. So good. The validation there is working. So let's go and use heads. And it was heads. And, it obviously was okay with how our random capitalization happened there. So let's go tails. Oh, come on, chat. What are we thinking next? Heads or tails? I'm gonna wait to see here. I'm feeling like I'm in risky territory here. My statistics brain in me thinks heads, but I'm not sure how lucky that I'm feeling today. Let's go heads. Ah, there we go. Thank you, Magic in Use. Unlucky Red Dev. Oh wow, we are doing well here. Oh, there we go. Game's over at 5. So you can see though how we've just made that kind of functionality there pretty quickly. Okay, so then what I want to go and do now is, I think there's a way that we can, yes, GG, drop in the G's there. Thanks, Magic in Use. Yes, flipping the coin there. Good. So then let me think here. So let's go and do this. I think there's a way with Cobra that it can handle inputs and validation rather than using the scan line approach that we're using at the moment. But I'm not entirely sure. So let me just use Copilot here as a rubber duck. So I am building a coin toss game as part of my CLI. I'm using the Cobra package as part of that, but I think there's a way we can use it even further. Right now we're using fmt.scanline. So fmt.scanline, by the way, is effectively like the kind of built-in read line functionality in Go. So if you're used to using Python or C#, you'll have like your line reader kind of functions. That's what scanline is. But what I'm hoping to do is, I think there's a way in Cobra that we can kind of bring the inputs in. So just being mindful that we've got a few different backgrounds here. So just wanted to provide that context. So right now we're using fmt.scanline, like the input. I'm doing some manual validation. Is there a way to do that in Cobra natively instead? And I might be wrong here, by the way. So what I'm going to do is a couple of things. I'm actually going to rerun that, because what you'll notice is by default, Copilot has taken the context of what I see on screen. So it hasn't taken the whole kind of file context. So I'm just, and it also used intent detection here and ran the workspace command. So Copilot will then try and figure out what other files it needs in the context of what we're working on. But to just be ultra specific, I'm going to not use that. And instead, I'm going to bring in the file and bring that in as context. And it's used workspace again, so fair enough. But now we're doing the full file there anyway. And it looks like it's bringing in a few things. So yes, we can improve the coin toss command using Cobra's flags and argument validation. Here's our factored version. Okay. So coin toss guess. Nice. So we're bringing it as part of the initial thing. If the length of the argument is not equal to 1, requires exactly one argument, the guess. Taking it to lower. Okay. But it will still do the scan line later on, I guess, is the point there. This is Go, by the way, Abisola. This is Go. This is what we're writing in here today. So that looks fine. I guess, I've got a bit of a split kind of approach to how I'm implementing that there. But one of the things that you can do here with Copilot Chat is you've got this button to apply an editor. So you can go and click that button. And then Copilot will then go and figure out where it needs to go and make the changes for you. So you don't need to just kind of blanket copy and paste. It can go and integrate those then for you. So coin toss guess, these are the arguments. Yeah, guess needs to be that. And I think there's some things that we could then start refactoring as well. But let's go and accept that first, just to make that change. We'll go and build that again. And there we go. We need to go and have the guess. So I'm going to say tails. Play again with the same guess. Oh, yes, let's do that. Uh-oh. Oh, I was worried that something was broke for a minute, but we were just very strangely lucky of getting 4 tails in a row. Maybe I'm lucky today. I don't know. That was kind of a fluke. So this is VS, right? It's a question here from LinkedIn. This is actually Visual Studio Code. So not Visual Studio, but Visual Studio Code. That is what we are using here. So thanks for the question there. So let's go then and let's go and make some changes, because I think there's some there's some optimization that can be done here. So I'm going to go back to Copilot edits, and I'm going to say it looks like there is some what's the word I'm looking for here? It looks like there is some duplicated functionality. Can you please split that out into reusable methods where it makes sense? I'm being a bit vague in my request there, just saying, there's some reusable stuff. Go and make the changes, please. And VedDev is exactly right. You can use Visual Studio. You can use Copilot in Visual Studio as well. Exactly right. Okay, so, right, we've got the ask play again. So do you want to play again with the same guess? And then it'll kind of take that answer. We've got the toss coin there as well. I think there's something that we can do with the validation, maybe. Yeah, it looks like maybe we lost something in there. Because I think we can only play with the same guess over and over again now, if I'm interpreting that right. So let me just go and build that and see. And again, that's on me because I haven't really been clear in my intent. So go build, GH game, coin toss, heads this time. Oops, that was my bad. Yes, yes, no. Yeah, so we've lost that kind of iterative approach there. So that was on me. So let me go and prompt Copilot to go and update that. And this is why it's important to keep reviewing the code that's coming back, because you want to make sure that it's doing what you expect it to. Equally, you want to make sure that you're building, you're running tests, etc., and have all of those things in place to to go and check those things. So this is why having all of those things is so important. So let me go and do this. When instead of asking the user to use the same selection, they should be able to change their selection. However, the validation of heads or tails should be the same at the start and when they are selected. So, VedDev, yes, that's correct. Don't push on Fridays or whatever the joke is. Luckily, we are Rubber Duck Thursdays. So, yes, we are not at risk of that unless we go on for a very, very long stream. But hopefully we should be okay. There we go. Right, so we've slightly changed that now. And it looks like there's a few more changes going on. So let's go and have a look at what's happening. So we've got toss coin. If it's, if it's heads, otherwise return tails, fine. Validate the guess. So taking the input to lower, get rid of the spaces. Guess must either be heads or tails. Good. Get next guess. Play again, enter heads or tails, or quit to end. Okay, cool. So quit is a new one there. Then it returns, then it does false. Okay, fair enough. Okay. It's just as a bool, okay. And then return validate guess. Nice. Result is toss coin, good. And then continue playing. Yeah. Okay, I mean, that looks reasonable, I think. Okay, let's go and accept that. That seems like it makes sense. So we'll go and do go build, go G8. Oh, sorry, GH Sky. No. You can see how used I am to doing stuff for Skyline here. GH-game. There we go. That's what we want to do. And we want to do coin toss. Obviously, that shouldn't work. Good. Heads. Again, enter heads or tails or quit. I'm going to go tails. Oh, it was heads. Never mind. Let's do the same thing again. Heads. There we go. My lucky streak is clearly over. We've not been doing so well in those past couple there. So let's do one more thing. Let's go and create a repo. So we've initialized the repo locally, and I want to go and create it. So we can go to GH repo, and then we can go and create. I can't remember exactly how that works, so I'm just going to look at the flag here. So GH repo create, there we go. So we can go and add a readme, we can clone, specify get ignore template, fine. Specify remote name for the new repository. Okay. What have I got in here so far? So we've got the .github stuff, CMD. You probably won't want to have the gh-game in there because that's a binary. And then we've got some other kind of setup files in there as well. So let's go get ignore the org. I'm just going to look something up super quickly. 1 second. Know where we're going. It is here. And I'm going to bring the screen back up. This is an example of a load of gitignore files that you could go and use. This is what I typically generate my gitignore files from. github/gitignore. Let me copy that over. Oh, there was one in there. I didn't even notice it. There we go. Anyway, right. So we'll add those pieces in there as well. Let's say do prevent binary being added. Go. And that looks good. Yeah, no binaries in there. Looks nice. And by the way, if you weren't already aware, you can use Copilot as well to help you generate commit messages. So if you hit that sparkle, add CoinTossGame and GitHub CLI commands, that is exactly what we did. So let's go commit that. Now we haven't added a remote repository yet. So let's go and try and do that. So GH repo create a new repository on GitHub from scratch. Push an existing local repository is what we want to do. Yeah, that's the one. Repository name is gh-game, sure. I'm going to put it to Chris Reddington. This is a CLI extension run games. No, this is a GitHub CLI extension run games on the command line. Get public. Oh, yes, please. And yes, I would like to push. Here we go. So hopefully we are now pushed public. So you can see here we've got this gh-game, we've got a command folder, and we've got that basic structure that we've been working on. So given the time, I think we're just over an hour in here. It's probably a good point for us to kind of pause and stop. But maybe if everyone's interested, maybe we could carry that on next week, maybe make some more games and start creating some of the things in that repository. So like the GitHub Actions, the README, some of those other things in there as well. Like, I need to add a license on there, for example, as well. But you can see how we were able to go from an idea, use that GitHub extension create command. We then were able to go and use Copilot to go and scaffold out that kind of CMD structure, which is a common structure for command line apps in Go. And then we were able to make that basic coin toss game, starting off with just tossing the coin, heads or tails. But then I said, actually, I didn't communicate my intent very well to Copilot. I need to go and actually be a bit more specific in my prompts and show that I want it to be interactive, that I want it to be more of an interactive game than just responding to the user with heads or tails. And then we were able to build that in there as well. So maybe that's something we can do. We can build a few more command line games here. We can go and do something with the repository here as well. So hopefully you've enjoyed it. Let us know in the chat if you like these sessions. I've been kind of keeping track of the chat and the messages. Enjoy the kind of the chill vibes. That's exactly what we're going for with these. So thank you. If there's something you'd like to see more of, like I've seen some questions around Python, for example. Let us know if you want a bit more Python or a bit more something else. Or if there's other areas that you want to see in GitHub as well. So if you want to focus on GitHub Actions or issues and project boards or whatever it is, let us know, because then we can make sure that we're prioritizing that as part of what we do here. My one final thing to plug before we disappear here this morning is actually I am not the only one. So if we just I think I need to disappear for a moment on screen so I can show you. So I'm going to go quiet for just one moment so you can read. So we will be back later again today. So I won't be back. My colleague Cassidy will be online a bit later at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And then what we'll do once we've wrapped up this session is we'll repoint the URL, gh.io/rubberduckthursdays, to go to that next session later today. So let me bring that banner up here so you've got that. So gh.io/rubberduckthursdays. It'll be again at 2 p.m. today, and Cassidy will be doing something a little different later today as well. So please do come along and join. Otherwise, we will be back once again at this same time next week. Come and join me, Chris Reddington, here this time next week for another Rubber Duck Thursdays. Otherwise, thank you very much, folks. I hope you've enjoyed the session, and we will see you very soon. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.